Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Thrive Innovation Series here in Silicon Valley. I'm John Hartnett, CEO and founder of SVG Ventures and Thrive, and I'm delighted to be joined here today by Matt Barnard and Nate Storey, the founders of Plenty, for a fireside chat on solving systemic food insecurity. Welcome, guys, and great to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us here, John.
Great, I'm looking forward to getting some of that tasty lettuce there behind you. We have focused our webinar series on the future of the food supply chain from field to fork. And what every consumer wants is fresh, flavorful, healthy food on time, today, and every day throughout the year. But what about if it doesn't have to come from the field, but much closer to me? Well, today's guests are fulfilling that consumer dream to get food to our tables. So get ready for a fascinating discussion. Next slide. You can join us on the discussion today if you want to either tweet or join the discussion online. You've got our hashtags, and please be vocal. Next slide. We've been holding our Thrive Innovation Series for the last number of months, and we've had some great leaders, CEOs and founders and innovators who are shaping the food and agriculture supply chain. And we were honored last month to have the USDA Secretary, Sonny Perdue, and delighted obviously to have the founders of Plenty here today. And next month, we will be joined by Bob Ryder, the head of R&D at Bayer. Next slide. We will host our Thrive Demo Day on September 24th in partnership with Forbes. We've normally held this at the Forbes AgTech Summit in Salinas, California. But unfortunately, obviously, it was postponed due to the pandemic. So we selected 13 amazing agri-food startups from around the world this year, and they've just completed a 4-month program, which commenced at our seed camp in February. You can register for the pitches on September 24th. And also, if you're interested in either co-investing with the winners, you can please email us at info@svg Ventures. Next slide. We'll also launch our series of Thrive Global Challenges on September 4th. We've been working with the USDA and also linking in with the SDG goals and really focusing on key areas around our industry regarding food safety, sustainability, efficiency in the supply chain, productivity, and health and nutrition. We'll also do this not just in the US, but we'll run a specific challenge in Canada and Australia and in Europe. I think we see somewhere about 60% of the entrepreneurs that we work with from outside the United States. So we'll expand that. If you're interested in that, obviously, please connect with us as well. Our next slide. I'm delighted to be able to host this today with the support of many of our corporate partners. We work with many of the key leaders in the world on the industry from the supply chain, and we work with them to accelerate their innovation and accelerate their growth by connecting them to the innovation ecosystem and working with key leaders. Next slide. Today, I mean, we've got, again, another quite an international audience. We've got people from about 50 countries. So good morning, good evening, good night from wherever you're from. And I think there's about 500 people here, registered today. It looks like about 40% of our audience are international. 60% are from the US, from about 33 states across the US. So great to see such a wide and diverse and international audience. So welcome today. Our next slide. We're going to run a couple of polls. We'll have 3 questions, so make sure to scroll down when you get the poll to pop up, which you should be seeing now. So we wanted to address a couple of areas around food security, purchase drivers, and also around our Thrive Global Challenges to get your view on what you think we should be doing. So please start voting or doing your polls now. Next slide. Obviously, to kind of make this as interactive as possible, we really wanted to join with our audience. If you've got any specific questions, please submit them now and throughout the event, and obviously we'll address those as we're going through. And you can upvote those as well, so they're the ones that are likely going to get the attention. Well, every year we run our Thrive Top 50. We analyze about 5,000 startups right across the world. not just early stage startups, but major growth stage, almost corporates and unicorns, as well. These are the companies that are making the biggest impact in the world to the food supply chain. And I'm delighted to say that Plenty have been on the top of our list for a number of years. So delighted to have the two guys here today. Maybe next slide, Jess. I think we're very familiar with controlled environment agriculture and what that can do. Matt and Nate, I mean, delighted to have you here. You've built a phenomenal platform that is truly transforming the food supply chain and delivering on that consumer promise that we talked about earlier. And before I kind of hand it over to get an overview, just Matt, I hadn't realized you were a 6th generation farmer, so that's very impressive and a master's in science from Stanford. So he's not just a tech guy; he's a hardcore, ag guy as well. And Nate is obviously co-founder and chief science officer. Nate received his PhD in agronomy from the University of Wyoming, with an emphasis on vertical plane hydroponic production, and his extensive experience in plant production and equipment design. And Nate also founded and was CEO of a company called Bright Agrotech. So delighted to have you both here today, and maybe we can kick off with your overview of what you guys are up to and give everybody a sneak peek into what's happening at Plenty.
You bet. Yeah, thanks for having us again, John. And what we'll do first is we'll give you a brief introduction to the problems that we're solving and a little bit on how we're solving them. And then I think we have a chat with you, John, after that. So,
sure.
So if we could have the slides we have, and we'll take you through about a 5-minute introduction. Our mission at Plenty is around improving the lives of plants, people, and planet. And one of the reasons we're focused on that, there are many reasons. If you could flip to the next, that is an image I never get tired of with that beautiful, lush uniformity. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we want to talk about here today is just to kind of set the context for why we formed the business in the first place, and what problems we're solving. So there have been 2 profound shifts in our food chain over the last half century, and that affect the systems of health. They affect the systems of water, in addition to agriculture and food. And one of those is that through all of history, people have solved for calories. It's been the most important thing to solve for relative to our diets, because without energy, we wouldn't be here. So that is the thing that's been the solve. And now what we really need to solve for is nutrients. The global pandemic before COVID was diabetes. Now we've been focused on COVID for the last 4 months for good reason. Diabetes is still there. It's still a global pandemic. And so the world needs to shift from a calorie-rich diet to a nutrient-rich diet. And that's a pretty profound shift over the last half century. And then I would say that the second big profound shift has been the fact that we've run out of farmland. In terms of productive farmland in the places where it's most economic to farm, particularly as it pertains to fruits and vegetables, which are very picky around where they like to grow. There isn't another acre of farmland left. There's none in the Yuma, there's none in the Yakima, the Columbia Basin, the San Joaquin, the Central. There's none. So we're out. And so it's in order to increase our capacity to meet our needs going forward, it's no longer about owning and controlling land. It's about owning and deploying data and specialized technology in order to grow that capacity and meet the needs of the system. So that's what we want to talk to you a little bit about today here. Oftentimes, we have to kind of levelize or level set that we're not here to take anyone's place in the field. This is about how do we meet incremental demand going forward, because there's already a lot of unmet demand today. with the world consuming a small percentage of, or about half of what is considered a healthy diet. So so that's it. Those two profound shifts are what I wanted to kind of set the stage with, and then I'll hand it to Nate from here.
Great, thanks, Matt. We can jump to the next slide. Great. So when we think about the problem in front of us, there's two big things that we're trying to solve for. One is food production, and one is for food distribution. So the interesting thing here is that despite kind of a mature agricultural industry, there's still a lot of people that consider themselves food insecure. So when we look around the world, a significant portion of the human population on this planet is food insecure to this day. And if you jump to the next slide, COVID-19 is only exacerbating that. So when we look past COVID-19 and the disruption of supply chains, when we look past the impacts of these disruptions to the food supply system, we're faced with kind of this strange dichotomy where we have people who are regularly dying of diet-based diseases. So these would be things like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension. And we also have people who are still regularly starving to death. And this is a very strange problem to have. People who have too much food, people who have too little food, or people who have too much of the wrong kind of food. And so one thing that we're attempting to do as a business is even things out. Let's jump to the next slide. With COVID-19, we're really seeing the supply chain highlighted as an area of weakness in the global food supply. So over time, many companies have moved to importing more and more food from other parts of the world. And one of the things that comes with that is you become dependent on very long transportation routes. You become dependent on ports operating. You become dependent on foreign governments. And an interesting part of this is, starvation was slowing down until COVID-19. And with COVID-19, we are seeing food insecurity jump up. And we're also seeing the number of people who are expected to starve to death over the next year or two rise significantly, almost double, in fact. So this should be a very scary thing for anyone in agriculture. I think all of us are here because we believe strongly that our job is to help feed people. And when we see these types of numbers, these types of statistics rising up, it's quite alarming. And I think that it highlights some fundamental problems that we have with our production and distribution system that we're here to solve. And next slide. So the fundamental problem here is that we produce roughly a third of the fruits and vegetables that we need for a healthy diet globally. This means we roughly need to triple global production of these things. The problem with that is that we don't have the land to triple production. We don't have the resources to triple production. And I'll hand it off to Matt here.
Yeah, so
Next slide.
Yeah, next slide. So if you look at what we need for the world to move from consuming about a third of what's considered to be a healthy diet with nutrient-rich foods, fruits and vegetables, you look at having to mow down and plant an area that is just shy of the size of the Amazon. So it's a pretty massive swath of land that we would need to plant out in order to do this. And that's to say nothing of the fact that that's not the ideal climate to be planting out for fruits and vegetables. There's a reason why California is the most prolific fruit and vegetable growing region in the world, followed by places like Chile and other Mediterranean climates. So in order to get us what we need, this is about really kind of creating farmland. So that we can move beyond. I mean, as we plenty have shown up in grocery stores with the food that we grow, the vegetables we grow, we found that the category is growing by 40% in some cases. In other words, people are just eating more fruits and vegetables when they have the option of being able to experience that intense flavor and shelf life. So this isn't about the substitution, it's just about filling that gap, going from the world consuming 1/3 of what it needs to be healthy to what it wants, which is 100%. Next slide, please. And so at Plenty, what we do that with is we do it with local farms, but by deploying farms in the communities where people eat the food rather than putting several thousand food miles on that food. We do it with farms that sip water, are very resource efficient. So we use less than 1% the land and less than 5% the water. And all of that is in the context of being insulated from extreme weather. And more importantly, we're insulated from extreme weather. That prevents catastrophic loss. It makes sure that we can drive yield as high as possible, but it also gives us control over the recipes that control flavor. Light recipes, climate recipes, stress recipes, things like that. And then at the end of the day, we get to do something that there's really not much precedent for, which is our farms are food safe certified because we impose so much control over the farm itself. The farm is food safe certified, and so we end up with a situation where we have safe food that in many times is thousands of times cleaner than what is available otherwise, as measured by coliform and microbial counts, and also without pesticides and other things, because what we do is we work to get people food free of chemicals. So it ends up being very fresh, clean, and pure. And so that's where we end out. And so that's what we have been working on. The set of problems to solve is how do we build farmland? How do we grow food? How do we meet need? And again, this isn't about replacement. This is about incremental capacity, because again, in the future and even now, we're no longer in a place where owning and controlling land is the answer. It's about owning and deploying data and specialized technology.
Excellent, Matt. And Nate, it was really incredible to hear that story so far. The scale and the significance of what you're doing, I mean, it's truly amazing and so fundamental. The hunger in the world, the lack of nutrition, food safety. I mean, it's really kind of hitting the nail on all heads. Maybe starting at the start, like I imagine, Nate hanging out in Wyoming and you're hanging out in Sand Hill Road or Palo Alto. How did you guys get together and kind of go after something that's such, a massive problem for the industry? And, if you could tell us a little bit about, that story, and also maybe some of the key challenges that you've got and what you overcame along the way, and maybe give us a sense of where you are today. It's a lot there, but it'd be great just to kind of get that story.
Well, I'll start with mine, and Nate can add his perspective. He's been at this even longer than I have. I came at this because I had spent a number of years both working on and looking for how I could spend my time towards solving for the water system. And that's how I came across this industry, which was very nascent at the time. And started looking at whether or not there was a business to build here while still working to solve for the water system. And it hit a lot of the things that really excite me, which is this is a big system level transformation, which helps to solve for things like the food and agriculture system, in addition to the footprint of the food and agriculture system, the water, health. And so then it started going about, hey, what are the technologies that are necessary in order to solve for this and build a sustainable, thriving business? And that's how Nate and I found each other. And, first it was getting to know one another, then it was getting to know each other actually through applied work. So, what projects could we work on as we engaged in a process that I call creeping commitment to figure out whether or not we had a compatible partnership here. And we put a farm on the Google campus, and that was our first demonstration farm. It was also our first lab. And and we started working on the problem and quickly learned some things that led us to work on much larger scale systems and raise the capital to do that. And we've been off to the races ever since. So I'll hand it over to Nate to give his perspective on that.
Yeah, so I'd been working in the space for a while, and I was approaching it from like a distributed food production standpoint. So how do we figure out how to distribute production in ways that allow people to access that production, that distribute kind of the productive capacity of our ag system around the world more evenly? And so that was kind of my approach, and I'd been working on designing hardware for a while, and Matt found me at a conference and said, "Hey, you want to get into the production side of things?" And I said, "That sounds fun." So that's kind of how it started for me. It was moving from one thesis to another. My first thesis was really, the fastest and most effective way to distribute agriculture around the world was through small producers. And after working in that space for a while, I decided it was time to think about a more centralized approach, figuring out how we can concentrate resources in order to spread faster, to make this thing happen more quickly.
Mm. And was there like an inflection point or kind of a point where you kind of feel like we've got to, a certain level here? Because obviously you're taking on a major, challenge, and at the same time very, capital intensive, and just kind of interesting to kind of see how you got there, and what would have been one of your biggest challenges, or what was the point where you kind of felt we've got something now?
As founders, I don't know that we ever get to feel that secure, but I would say there've been a lot of milestones. It's been chipping away over time. At first it was, boy, we've got our first demonstration farm, our first customer, and our first lab. Then it was, we have our first commercial scale design, and then it was, hey, we have our first commercial scale demonstration, because before that, a container farm is only a demonstration scale model, and in agriculture, there are things you learn from demonstration scale, but until you prove it in continuous operation at production scale, you still don't have a thing. So you have to translate, and that translation work to go from bench scale to production scale is pretty intense and takes the investment of both time and capital. And so we've had the milestones from that farm to raising our first outside capital so we could build our first large-scale demonstration, which just catapulted our learning rate and the development pace of our farms. We then launched our first fully automated and by far most productive farm about a year ago. And and now are kind of in the business of versioning farms the way that other technology companies version smartphones or other technology systems. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a building set of milestones over time as we work towards fulfilling this mission.
Yeah, excellent.
The other thing that I would add to that is like the vision is constantly creeping, right? So as we get better and better at growing one crop, and as we begin to investigate other crops, we realize how broad the horizon is. So, I think we started thinking, leafy greens are kind of, the primary crop for indoor growing. And over the years, that understanding has evolved pretty significantly to include a number of other crops and a number of other opportunities to produce food indoors. So I think from the critical mass standpoint, we have our business milestones and we have our business growth, but we're also looking to the future and imagining what this industry looks like when significant number of the things on the produce shelf are being grown in farms around the world indoors.
And from a technology perspective, I mean, I suppose outsiders looking in think about warehouses and LED lights off the shelf. I mean, you haven't done that. I mean, you've really built a pretty complicated or complex, platform with a mix of sensors, AI, robotics, and I mean, you're obviously expanding to different commodities and locations. when you're looking forward, like what are the technologies that you're looking for? You know, we've got a whole host of entrepreneurs out there that you're talking to right now. You know, is there something that you'd like to be able to add to your platform today?
Yeah, I mean, I think our farm, building our farm has been the process of working through a number of different challenges. And every time we work through a challenge, it opens the door to a new opportunity. So we're presented with new problems to solve. And in the course of solving those problems, new technologies kind of naturally evolve. So, you know, for us, pretty much when we look at the farm, we're looking at something that is in flux. It's in a constant state of evolution. It's getting better every single day. So, you know, I'd say like the farm as a whole is in a constant state of evolution. Within the farm itself, you know, we've got a number of different technology focuses, but I think the biggies are, you know, we're looking at lighting and trying to understand, you know, how lighting evolves into the future, how we get more efficient with our lighting, how we move plants around and orient them in space more efficiently, and how we sense things. So how we understand what the plant experience is, not just at this whole farm level, but down to the cellular level. And so we're taking this approach of understanding the plant experience, describing that experience in data, and then building the systems. And this is probably the most important part, is the processes and the systems for moving that data around, interpreting that data and making it actionable. And so that sounds kind of boring, but ultimately that is the fundamental power of the model, is we have access to more data and more control, you know, than probably anyone before.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I mean, today, I mean, you're definitely solving a local problem, you know, delivering on local communities. How do you bring that, you know, around the world? You know, how do you expand that into, you know, different geographies, and maybe some of the geographies that you talked about, you know, that are suffering, you know, significantly in terms of food insecurity?
You're on mute, Matt.
Carefully and diligently, I would say. You know, the international expansion is challenging and complex in and of itself. We do have pretty ambitious global plans, but you know, they mean nothing unless we execute. So this is all about just like what's been in our past. Going forward, this is about chipping away and making sure that our focus areas are clear and we execute as a team.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I mean, obviously, what you're doing, I mean, there's a significant runway ahead of you in terms of just the scale and the opportunity that you're dealing with. It reminds me a lot of kind of like looking back in the 90s. I'm old enough to think about this, but you know, looking back in the 90s when Amazon started selling books, and today they've become this unbelievable company. Or I was in the smartphone industry. The smartphone was around 10 years before Apple brought it out in 2007. I feel like this is such a major transformation in the industry. Where would you say you are on that kind of timeline? Because I think that, you know, we've, you know, there's a number of players in the controlled environment agriculture space, but when you kind of look at that timeline, where do you see, you know, where you're at today?
Yeah, that Amazon analogy is a great one. That's an interesting parallel, because if you think about where we were 2 decades ago, I mean, Amazon's about 25 years old. We now have smartphones in our pocket that are more powerful than the clunky laptops, even the desktops we had 20 years ago. And we do things with those supercomputers in our pocket that we never imagined maybe that we'd be doing at all, and definitely not through a smartphone. It's changed the way we live. It's changed the way we access what we need, and it's changed the way we spend our time. Well, when it comes to technologies like smart indoor farms, we are pretty confident that given that amount of time, you know, a 2-decade time horizon, people will be eating differently 2 decades from now than they eat today. I mean, one of the reasons why when we show up in a grocery store and their category expands, they end up selling more fruits and vegetables than they sold the day before, is because when you're able to pack that much intense flavor into a fruit or vegetable, now you have people eating kale with their fingers as a snack, instead of needing to add 10 other ingredients and dressing and a fork and a plate and some prep work. You've just changed the use case for that fruit or vegetable. You've changed the way people can enjoy it. And so that's one of the things we're doing. And so that's just changing the use case for something that people have known, like a kale that we make taste different and sweeter than what people are used to. And then, but what happens when you start growing fruits and vegetables that have been hard to impossible to commercialize outside, like on the farm that I grew up on in Wisconsin? Mm-hmm. There are 70,000 edible plants in the world, and there are only a few dozen of them in the grocery store, in part because when there's no control over the elements, it's like I said, difficult to impossible to commercialize those plants. So, we now more and more every year, as we version our farms year over year, are able to get people things that they just have not experienced out of a grocery store or a restaurant before. And so people are going to eat differently. We think they're going to be healthier for it. And that's what I would say to that question.
Excellent. And in terms of like the future, if you were kind of like predicting what you think, what we can expect in 5 or 10 years time, either technology based or what this will look like. I mean, what are kind of some of your, predictions?
You want to take that one, Nate?
Sure. Well, I think people are going to be eating much healthier diets. Yeah. So access to more fresh fruits and vegetables around the world is going to change how people eat. That's going to change how the healthcare system works. It's going to fundamentally change human health. It's going to change how we think about healthcare and how we think about quality of life. So at the human level, I think that's a pretty massive shift compared to where we've been for a little bit here. At the technology level, I believe that we're going to be growing a number of different fruits and vegetables indoors. We have started with greens because greens in some ways make the most sense for crop number one. But we're very rapidly expanding into additional crops, and frankly, there's no end in sight as to what can make economic sense indoors. As you refine your efficiencies, as you refine your technology approach. So I think the next 10 years are going to be quite exciting, and I think we're going to be very surprised by how quickly new crops are brought indoors and how quickly people get access to those new crops.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, guys. Maybe we can switch to we'll take a look at the polling and see what people are saying, and maybe we'll switch out to the audience and have them give us a few questions that I know are teed up. So, so Jess, are you able to display the sort of questions? Yeah, I can see it now. So this is pretty, so what initiatives does your company have to address food security over the next 12 months? And it's quite, quite spread out here. Our company does not have any formal initiatives. That's number one, 24%. And then I think, 19%, our company expressed support toward increasing food security, with specific plans not yet being determined. And I think actually number one there is our company spearheads specific programs to address food security in the communities we serve. Any reflections on that particular question? Is that a surprise, or does it look what you'd expect?
That's about what I would expect. I don't know about you, Nate, but we work with a lot of companies who are donating more in this current context, and I tell you the food system is just much more in the frame today than it was even 4 months ago. When we talk with partners, when we talk with regulators, we hear words like food security. That wasn't a term that used to be on the list. Yeah. Before, we never heard that, and and now it's like common usage. Mm-hmm. So this is not a surprise at all.
Mm-hmm. Second question is, what would you encourage to add more fruits and vegetables to your diet? And top of the list is longer shelf life. 35% of people felt that was the most important thing. And then followed closely cost effectiveness, 24%, year-round accessibility, 23%, and then taste obviously is still up there as well. So any, I mean, you're probably happy to see this, I'm sure.
I am. I'm surprised actually flavor didn't make it higher up the list, because it's interesting when you look at the consumer data as well as what we've experienced in market. When you ask people what they want for themselves, they say in pretty resounding numbers, they say, I want to be healthier. That's the number one thing people tend to want for themselves. When you ask them what that means, everyone generally knows what that means. It doesn't matter if they're a kid or an adult, rich or poor, like everyone knows what being healthy means. And then when you ask them why they're not eating healthier, they say because flavor. Mm. And so when you boil it all down, you know, it's one of the biggest keys to unlock healthy diet. You've got the supply side, but you also have demand. I mean, people solve for what they enjoy and they solve for convenience. Mm-hmm. It's what we all tend to solve for. So, but shelf life, obviously no one likes to throw their money away by throwing away the fruits or vegetables they just bought at the stores. Shelf life, I'm not surprised at all to see at the top. The taste I would have expected to maybe climb a little bit higher.
Yeah.
How about you, Nate? Are you surprised by any of that?
I would have expected flavor a little bit more, but I knew as soon as shelf life came in at 35%, you'd be pretty satisfied with that. We spend a lot of time, and Matt has banged the shelf life drum for a long time. You know, we talk about expanding into new markets and delivering more value. That is like one of the fundamental things that we can do with a shorter distribution chain and kind of just changes in processing. That's one of the biggest things that we can impact. So.
Yeah. I wonder if, you know, I mean, if we took this poll maybe a year out, I know we're like smack in the middle of this pandemic and people are experiencing challenges in the food supply chain and shelf life. We're experiencing it right now. I wonder, you know, would things change a little bit maybe in a year out, you know, so just interesting. And then our last question was, it was more around our global challenges for Thrive. What are people most interested in us trying to go after here and solve? And sustainability, I'm not surprised with that, you know, sustainability in terms of challenges around climate change, food waste, you know, carbon sequestration, water quality, etc. And then looks like number 2 is productivity, you know, doing more with less in terms of the supply chain. And obviously that's precisely what you guys are doing, is doing more with less for sure. And what's the next one down there? Supply chain. So traceability, resilience, efficiency are all kind of key areas there. So that's very helpful to be able to kind of see those, and good to see these together. So maybe if we go to some of the Q&A from some folks, I haven't looked at any of these questions yet, so you guys are looking at them at the same time. Matt and Nate, can you see the questions okay?
Yeah.
So on the top of the list is Steve Hansen. I sincerely applaud the mission. I'm a huge proponent, but by what about the cost structure? How do you stack up on a variable and fully loaded basis? And 2, how do you compare versus other indoor hybrid players like, I'll mention these names, I know I'll go quickly by it, Aero Farms and Bowery.
Yeah, that was a compound question. I'm not sure that was fair.
Like 3 questions in one.
Yeah, right. So, you know, I would say a couple things. You know, one of the reasons why we have focused on, you know, broad-based technology development, like you were talking about, John, as opposed to just buying off the shelf, is because, you know, we learned early on that without doing things like developing more efficient lights than were available and lights that are designed to be optimally efficient within our farm and within our systems, you know, we couldn't grow at the kind of scale we want to grow at grocery store prices. This is about, bringing the cost down year over year as we version our farms. And we've been doing that very aggressively to the point where now, our farms are profitable. And so that unit cost profitability is what we focus on. And we're happy to say we're there now. And as we version year over year going forward, we expect to keep extending that lead and bring more and more. The question now, or what we're solving for now, is bring more and more crops into that grocery store set.
Right.
So like the farm we released this year will commercialize roughly 3 times the crops that are currently commercial, and we have some new crop types coming up here soon. So we're pretty excited about all of that.
Okay. Kimberly Chang Haynes, what is the energy footprint for a farm like this?
So that's another exciting thing when it comes to versioning farms year over year is, our team, as we do things like, as Nate and the plant science team work on the productivity of our plants and the perfect recipes to drive their productivity and efficiency. Our engineering team works on things like more efficient lights and environmental controls. And, we released version 4 of our lighting system this year, for example, along with environmental controls that have significantly reduced our energy consumption, per kilogram of plants produced. And so as you look at farm versioning, we're talking about, with every version year over year, increasing energy efficiency by multiples. It's 5x one time, and it's 2x another, and it's 4x another. And so those are big stepwise jumps year over year. And so that's one of the exciting things that we have to report, is that our farms are very efficient per kilogram and continue to get more so year over year.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that, our farms, and especially things like energy, so kilowatt hours per kg of production, these are compound cost curves. So, we look at other parts of the industry and we look at, say, like the cost curve of LEDs, the drop in price and the increase in efficiency simultaneously. And we have that across multiple elements. And then, I mean, the amazing thing is when you combine multiple elements together, you can build these incredible compound cost curves. So in our instance, Plenty kind of has its own cost curve trajectory when it comes to kilowatt hours per kilogram of production, because we've taken all of these individual elements that are on their own cost curves, we've combined them and stacked them, and then we've put together an incredible R&D program, which is driving yield up as a function of the energy that we're using already. So we're attacking the problem from both sides, both reducing increasing the efficiency of the system and reducing the total number of kilowatt hours necessary to emit, say, a mole of photons. Then we're taking that mole of photons, and at the plant level, we're doubling yield, or tripling yield, or quadrupling yield, or 12xing yield. By attacking both of those things together, we're driving cost out at a pretty incredible rate by driving yield up and efficiency up at the same time.
Okay. Let me try to get 2 quick questions in then. So Christine Costello, what is your plan for scaling up your operations? Are you looking to share expertise international? If so, where and with what types of partners? Sounds like people want to work with you internationally.
Well, so, I would say we have we have pretty aggressive ambitions, as I mentioned, globally. There are 500 communities around the world with 1 million or more people. They each need 1 or more farms, we think. And so I would just encourage, please call us if you'd like to talk further. This is what we'll be working on over the coming years, is doing that as aggressively as we can.
Okay. This maybe last question from Konstantin Papadakis. Sounds like it's for Nate. What technology is being used or needed to measure nutrient density, vitamins, minerals, compounds, etc., of the Plenty vegetables?
Yeah, I mean, we mostly use third-party labs for that type of analysis. I mean, the important thing to talk about when you're talking about nutrition when it comes to vegetables is to talk about the mineral nutrition of the plant, and then kind of this other budding area of interest, which is like around antioxidants, phytonutrients, right? And when it comes to mineral nutrition, I always say a healthy plant is a healthy plant. Whether it's in the field or in the farm, mineral nutrition will be roughly similar. But one of the amazing things that we can do in our farms is manipulate how the plant produces what we would call antioxidants, or some of these organic compounds that have human health benefits. So by manipulating light, by manipulating temperature, humidity, airflow, you name it, we have the ability to make these plants express certain compounds in higher concentrations that can be good for human health. So I'm excited about that particular aspect of it. When it comes to measurement, yep, mostly third-party labs, although we're working very hard to move more and more of our testing and measurement in-house.
Great. Well, Nate and Matt, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time out to share your story, and obviously congratulations on everything you've done. I mean, it's truly amazing what you've created. I've been fortunate to go visit you a couple of times over the last year or so, and it's incredible to see this in action. And also, I want to say it's a pleasure working with your team. It's really enjoyable. I know our team was working very closely with you preparing for this, so thank you, and thank you to the team at Plenty.
Yeah, John, thank you for having us, and thanks for all you do, for the ag and the food chain. And we appreciate it.
Thank you. So maybe in closing, I'll get Jess to maybe put up the next 2 slides. If you're interested in looking at what we're doing, either as a corporate partner or if you're interested in any of our global challenges, you can connect with us at thrive@svgventures.com. So please let us know, because we'll be launching these challenges pretty soon. Next slide. Next month, really looking forward to having a conversation with Bob Ryder, who's the head of R&D at Bayer, on farming the way to a sustainable future. So really should be a really interesting conversation there. And then I think that's my last slide. And I want to again thank you for joining with us today, and really enjoyed getting the questions, the polling. Thank you for your contribution, and look forward to seeing you next time, which is on August 20th. So hope everybody keeps safe and healthy, and call out to my team and Jess and Helen for all the help that they've done to pull this together. So thank you, and take care, everybody.
Thanks, John.